So the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse has finally arrived after years of waiting. But honestly, I was someone who wasn't really that excited for the second film. Don't get me wrong, I loved the first film. If you've seen my review of it last week, you know that. But I always felt that the first film was self-contained. If you remove the post-credit scene, it feels like a very self-contained Spider-Man movie. Not that I thought the sequel was going to be bad or anything, but I just wasn't really excited for it. It wasn't until the second trailer came out that I actually started to get more excited for it. And after finally seeing it, is it better than I thought it would be? Hell yeah! This movie was amazing. I guess I'll start with the characters first. Miles Morales in this movie is great. Just like the first film, I really like Miles in these movies. And honestly, if I know this probably isn't saying much since he's the main character of these movies, but I will say I do like these movies have made me like Miles Morales in these movies more than Peter Parker. Which is something that I wasn't really expecting, because going into the first movie, I was like, I don't really like Miles Morales, but the movie made me like him, and the second movie makes me like him even more. Then you have Gwen Stacy, who of course is back as Spider-Woman in this movie. Surprisingly, the movie actually focuses a lot on Gwen Stacy as well as Miles. The entire opening of the movie is focused on Gwen Stacy and delves more into her origin story of how she became Spider-Woman and, her relationship with her dad, who is a cop. And, again, I said this before, but I may not be a big fan of Spider-Gwen in the comics, but this opening scene, the whole opening scene is entirely taken from the Spider-Gwen comic books. Her origin is almost note for note like the comic books, even down to some of the dialogue. It's crazy. You can really tell that the people behind the Spider-Verse movies really do care about the fans, but not just the fans, they care about the average moviegoers as well. They're trying to make these movies for both sides, newcomers and diehard fans, because they put in all of this detail that the fans will notice, but it's also just a really good, well-written movie that, the average person can enjoy. I was also very surprised by the fact that we don't really actually get that much of the Spider-Verse element in this movie until, the last third of the movie. The first third is dedicated to, the setup of each of the characters, and then you have the second third, which is, dedicated to Miles and his relationship with his mom and dad, and, that dynamic, and also introducing you to the Spot, one of the main villains of the movie. And again, not saying that that's a criticism, but I was expecting more of the Spider-Verse stuff, but that really doesn't come into play until the last third. Also, I really enjoyed the Spot as a villain, as well as Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099. I thought they both were really great villains, and they did some really creative stuff with the Spot in terms of animation, and I'll get into the animation in a bit, but yeah, they did some really creative stuff with Spot, and the different universes he travels to is really, or some of them are really creative, and that was fun to see. I mean, just look at Spider-Punk alone in this movie. I mean, I've heard that it took 4 years just to animate Spider-Punk, which is crazy and, completely understandable. I mean, you'd think that they would have to take more time with a movie like this. I mean, the amount of different unique animation styles they put in for each Spider-Person, I mean, it's insane. Almost every single Spider-Person in this movie has a unique animation style that sets them apart. The animation style of this movie completely blows the first movie's animation out of the water. I don't know how it was possible to top the first movie's animation, but they did it. I mean, this movie is worth to see just for the animation alone. I think the animation is honestly the best part about the movie, more so than the story and the characters, honestly. I like the different styles and universes, the way it looks. It is amazing. I also really liked any of the scenes involving Gwen and her talking to her dad, because the background has this like painted canvas look to it, and it's beautiful. Now, I'm not really going to go into spoilers because, I figure why bother, because I don't really have much to say in regards to spoilers. I loved the movie, but I will say that the movie ends on a huge cliffhanger. And the only thing I'll really say is that, like, yeah, the cliffhanger was great. It was fantastic. Like, it was crazy. But I just personally think people are kind of overreacting a little bit, because, like, yeah, it's clearly supposed to be a part one of two. People are acting like this has never been done in a comic book movie, like a comic book movie has never done this before, like a two-parter cliffhanger. When it's like, Avengers Infinity War and Endgame do exist, guys. I mean, like, people are acting like the cliffhanger was something mind-blowing that nobody expected. And I'm not saying that I expected this, like, I didn't expect it, but I just, like, it wasn't the most mind-blowing thing to me, you know? Like, I honestly would argue that Infinity War had a better cliffhanger than Across the Spider-Verse did. Even though I do think Across the Spider-Verse, I liked it more than Infinity War. Infinity War was just, like, more shocking as a cliffhanger than Across the Spider-Verse. And also, I've heard people say that they can't really judge this on its own because it's a two-parter, and I don't understand that. You can judge this movie alone, even aside from Beyond the Spider-Verse. I just don't understand that mentality that, like, you can't judge Across the Spider-Verse because it's a part one movie. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. That's like saying you can't judge Infinity War on its own. Like, yeah, you absolutely can judge Infinity War on its own. I think Infinity War, on its own, is a great movie. Again, if you were to ignore Endgame, I still think Infinity War is a great superhero movie on its own, you know? Just like I'll say, Across the Spider-Verse is a fantastic movie on its own, and that's before even seeing Beyond the Spider-Verse. I understand that you can judge both movies as a whole package. That makes sense because it's a part one and part two situation. But the mentality that you can't judge Across the Spider-Verse on its own or Beyond the Spider-Verse on its own just doesn't make sense to me. I just think that's kind of dumb. But yeah, Across the Spider-Verse is great. Animation is mind-blowing. The characters are awesome. It's so fun to watch all the different unique styles. I'm going to give Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse a 9.5 out of 10. Is it better than the first movie? I had a hard time deciding, honestly, but the more I've thought about it, I think I like the first movie just a tiny bit more. Just a tiny bit. I've heard people calling Across the Spider-Verse, some people are saying it's the best Spider-Man movie ever made, and that it's better than the first movie. I don't agree with that. I totally understand if you thought this was the best Spider-Man movie or better than the first movie. I get it, but yeah, I personally think that it's not as good as the first movie. And if you want to know where it would be in my Spider-Man ranking, I think the first two Raimi films are better. Spider-Man 2 is still my favorite Spider-Man movie, but Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse would be close behind the first Raimi film. So that's what I thought of Across the Spider-Verse. It's crazy that we're getting Beyond the Spider-Verse in March. It might be delayed, who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if it's delayed. But yeah, we're getting the next film in less than a year, which is really exciting. And yeah, unlike the second film, I'm actually excited for the third film, just because, I really wasn't expecting it to be this good. I mean, I didn't think this movie would be bad at all. I just, like, it kind of blew me away in regards to, what I expected versus what we got, So, yeah. I would absolutely recommend this film. I wouldn't say it's like the best Marvel film this year. I think Guardians 3, I liked Guardians 3 just again, a tiny bit more. It's really hard because like, again, Across the Spider-Verse, I know I'm kind of saying, oh, well, this movie was better, this movie was better. And I'm kind of making you think that I didn't really like Across the Spider-Verse as much, but keep in mind, it was really hard to decide whether I liked Guardians 3 more or Into the Spider-Verse more. Yeah, I do think Guardians 3 and Into the Spider-Verse are a tiny bit more, a tiny bit more better, is what I'm trying to say. But again, it's very close. Across the Spider-Verse is still a great, fucking amazing Spider-Man movie. And yeah, it's the best Spider-Man movie we've gotten in almost 5 years. I'm not really a big fan of No Way Home, so that's why, but yeah, this is the best Spider-Man movie since the first Spider-Verse movie. And it's also crazy to think that the first Spider-Verse movie came out almost half a decade ago. So yeah, I'm glad that Spider-Man is finally getting some movies that I actually like for once. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good night.